A very good morning to all of you. Welcome back to Ansarkari. So today we are taking up all the important topics from 14th of October's newspaper. So first is that Right to Information Act 2005 completes 20 years. So here it is giving us one of the critical analysis of this act, how important it is, what are certain exceptions related to the act, and how we are facing current challenges. So even that is a roadblock in terms of effective implementation of the act. So we see that first argument is the vacant post, and it is stated that government is cutting the RTI Act by not appointing the information commissioners. So this is leading to mounting of the backlogs. Here, certain examples are given. For example, there is Commission of Jharkhand. So it has not been functional for over 4 years. So what is the point of having these regional, we can say, commissions, which are accessible to the people as a part of their fundamental to right to privacy and even right to information, both at the same time. So it is important to balance both of them. Then here it is being stated that even Supreme Court has also intervened in the same direction, and it has stated that 8 out of the 11 posts which are vacant in the Central Information Commission, still we are not seeing any action being taken. So even when it comes to the final appellate authority, so RTI information commissioners, they act as the final appellate authority. So this is one important PT fact, and they are mandated to both safeguard and at the same time facilitate people's right to information. And it is also seen that the appointments which are made by the government, so there was this recent amendment where government centralized the powers within itself, within the union, where the government had to determine the tenure, the salaries, pensions, and the post-retirement entitlements. So it is being stated that there is certain political influence, even if we are seeing the appointments as well. So there is challenge when it comes to ensuring that the act is functioning, or the information commissioners or different commissions which are there, they are functioning in a fair, in a just, in an unbiased manner. So there's this report. It shows that it would take more than a year for an appeal or a complaint to be disposed of in 14 of the commissions that this report is assessing. So there is failure to fill the vacancies. It is being stated if this is happening, so the act becomes a dead letter. And even like majority of the appointments, as we were talking about, they're of retired government people or the people who enjoy political patronage. So this is promoting culture of impunity. So these are the key phrases in this entire article. Destroys the basic framework of incentives and disincentives, promotes culture of impunity, exacerbates applicants who seek information at high cost because it is a part of their fundamental right. And the main intention behind, again, RTI Act was to reach or to increase transparency and accountability till the last mile. And this is again one of the, we can say, one of the strongest foundations for even the Indian democracy at the same time. And there is laxity in enforcing accountability because of all these challenges. Now, when we are coming to certain exceptions which are there, and further amendments has also been done to those exceptions which are there under the RTI Act. For example, there is Section 8, which is talking about that the information would not be disclosed when certain grounds are met. So if those are met, so particular information that is being demanded or that is being filed under the RTI Act, that it should be disclosed, it will not be disclosed. Firstly, if there is no relationship to any public activity or the public interest, then the information cannot be disclosed. Secondly, if it would cause unwarranted invasion of privacy. So here we're talking about the right to privacy as a fundamental right under Article 21 of the Constitution, as it was stated under the Puttaswamy judgment. And there is third ground is if there is no larger public interest. So these are three grounds, again, important for prelims examination at the same time. So here we saw that recently there was this Digital Personal Data Protection Act of 2023. So it has also brought this explicit provision, which is amending the RTI Act to exempt all the personal information from disclosure. The key word is all personal information. earlier there were certain grounds जो हमने section 8 के अंदर बात करे, but now this, because of this DPDP Act, it is exempting all the personal information from disclosure. So what if that it is again a situation of right to privacy versus the larger public interest? If there is certain exception scenario, then what would be again the course of action is the question is, we can say, that should be answered or that we need to be clear with beforehand. So another key provision was deleted, and which was related to that citizens had the right to information at par with the members of parliaments and the MLAs. So this has also been deleted. And then there is another report by the NGO, that is Transparency International India. So it is also stating that this is one of the major concerns, that 100 people have been killed for using the RTI Act. So in this case, for example, when we talk about the incidents of, for example, Gauri Lankesh. So these are, we can say these were the activists, but again, working in larger public interest. And there are certain such types of deaths or the murders which happened, which has happened before as well. So there are then instances of threatening, of assault, of false cases against such people. And at the same time, we have another important act, which is the Whistleblowers Protection Act. This was also passed in 2014. 10 years have been completed, but still we see that the central government has failed to formulate rules regarding this. So again, despite having the act, it has not been implemented in letter and spirit. And this is, we can say, one of the solutions also when it comes to preventing the even the murders at the same time, or as we say, that delivery of due justice. So at the same time, in India, we see 6 million of such applications are filed every year. So how many are successfully disposed of is the question. So it is important question related to retributive justice and related to directly the strong foundation of democracy. So if there is erosion of this fundamental right to information, then there would be erosion of democracy at the same time. So it is an important article because RTI Act has completed 20 years. Now, when we're talking about the practice of sati, which is considered to be inhumane, which was, we can say, practiced during the ancient times, during the medieval times, when it comes to the orthodox practices related to the historical cultural practices. But now here, this is just an instance of, again, one of the last Indian villages, the Sati village, as it is being called, is the Seekers Zilwara village. So it is in Rajasthan. And so here it is just talking about that there was this last incident, and there has been no incidents reported after the enactment of the Commission of Sati Prevention Act of 1987. So here this act is what we can remember out of this. Extending social justice. So distributingly, arguments they have used against the reservations earlier, they are being used now to oppose the sub quotas within the SCs when we're talking about the reservation related to them. So when we're talking about social justice, so again, affirmative action is one of the ways of ensuring social justice. So it is talking particularly in the context of reservations. So first argument would be again that when it comes to the Indira Sane judgment, it stated that 50% should be the ceiling when it comes to the reservation, but we have crossed that. So where are we going to stop is the question. And then even having reservation, have we so far assessed about how beneficial has it been, how effectively has it been implemented, what has been the results after its implementation, has it really been delivering the social justice as it was intended, or the intention behind bringing the the reservations has been met or not is the another question. Then it is talking about further deeper, the second layer, which is the opposition to the sub quotas within the SCs. So uh, within this also, again, the same argument emerges that this is to make the reservation more effective, that sub quotas would be particularly catering to the backward section of the society. It would be targeted in a better manner for the people who actually are need who are in need of the reservation. So sub quotas, for example, when we're talking about here, particularly SCs, so there's this total reservation. Within that, there are different sections of community within SC, so they would be having their sub quotas reserved under this. So, for example, here we have one of the judgments of 2004 by Supreme Court, which is the E.V. Chinaya judgment. So, here the subcategorization had been declared to be unconstitutional. So, then we had this Andhra Pradesh, so it was in the context of this Andhra Pradesh Act of Rationalization of Reservation Act of 2000. So, it was struck down because of the Supreme Court judgment. So, there was a 6-1 majority judgment. And at the same time, we saw that the court's own 2022 decision, which ratified the EWS reservation, it has applied dynamite to its record of mostly progressive jurisprudence on social justice. So this is the keyword, progressive jurisprudence. So where actually we see the need. So that is why we can say that even the 50% ceiling has been, it has not been obliged with. And when it comes to even the creamy layer section of the society, who actually, again, do not need the reservation or even the sub quotas. So the main purpose behind sub quotas is to again identify the creamy layer within each section of the society which enjoys reservation and again penetrate much deeper. So Article 341 of the Constitution is one thing. So you can just mention about Prerna, what is Article 341 and 342 talking about?
So 341, it identifies SCs and deals with the notification of scheduled castes. And 42 is for the scheduled tribes.
So
So
it is
concurrent castes and tribes are eligible for special protection and benefits under the Constitution.
okay. So even when it comes to identifying the list of the SCs, so the parliament is having the major powers. States do not have the power to amend the list of STs, which is the scheduled tribes. Apart from this, when you're talking about social justice, so it is even in the form of like different policy measures. For example, we have the Food Security Act, under which again we have the PDS scheme is there. So that is also one of the ways of ensuring and delivering social justice. Apart from the reservation that we have, it is again we can talk here about another context also, that is and the entire debate related to reservation in promotions as well, which was again struck down by the Supreme Court. So social justice, it can be in again several ways. So again, we say that the revenue expenditure of the government constitutes a major section when it comes to even the subsidies, be it related to fertilizers. Social justice for agriculture is the dimension that we can talk about here when talking about the subsidies for the fertilizers, or when it comes to again making the agriculture sector more competitive. And here we can also talk about the PVTG section of the tribal community. So we see that the ideas of B.R. Ambedkar sir are more relevant here. So as we say that the sections of society was called as depressed classes. So they were the vulnerable minority within the larger group of minorities. So staying united to secure their rights is important. And then when we talk about the Mahar Satyagraha, which is again related to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, that is one of the important incidents, how he took the leadership role when it comes to getting the people from the vulnerable section their due rights in the society, or breaking those, we can say again, the orthodox ideas that Mahar Satyagraha focused upon, particularly that the backward section of the society would also be using the same wells to withdraw water as being used by the upper section or the general section. So turning to the east, amid escalating global conflicts, We are also seeing ASEAN faces external and internal challenges. So India's regional role that we can talk about here. So already we are seeing that the disturbances and the instability in the West. So even when we're talking about the Look East policy that was again formulated in 1994 and the 10th anniversary of this refined Act East policy, which is again introduced in 2014. So since again these are covering respective like landmark years. So we're talking about its success. So particularly in this context, we talk about the regional security because again, this falls into the Indo-Pacific region. Secondly, we talk about expansion of more trade in this region because again, at the same time, India's strategic location or India is again considered to be a subcontinent because we are a peninsular country. So the Indian Ocean constitutes again one of the major important areas when it comes to ensuring the security of the important sea lanes of communication. And again, at the same time, the increasing risk from the natural disasters is another area that we've been talking about. So here we see that in the context of ASEAN, which is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, so it has 10 member countries. So firstly, we should be aware of it. India and China are not a member of ASEAN. This is another important fact. And India is also not a part of RCEP. RCEP is a regional comprehensive economic partnership by ASEAN. So here we had the concerns related to our domestic agriculture sector if we join it. So the competitiveness and the growth of the Indian domestic agriculture sector would get impacted. So that was the reason why we didn't join RCEP. So 30 years of Look East and 10 years of Act East policy. So, regional institution building and economic integration. So, these are the keywords specifically when it comes to India's main objectives or the vision related to the relations with ASEAN. So, India's reintegration with the region. This is another opportunity that we can say has been allowed by the Act East and the Look East policy, or when we are even talking about that the neighborhood first policy is also somewhere related to these Act East policies. So today we see that great powers are increasingly they are at odds. There's rivalry is slowing in a way, but it is not reversing. Rivalry exists, but again, there is not a uniform trend when it comes to even resolving. So we are not moving towards resolution of those rivalry or the conflicts which exist. It is, we can say, slowing down because of again, certain other regions might become hotspots during a particular time period. So that is the reason. So trends towards globalization is another area which is again facilitated more of greater regional integration. And China's regional assertiveness is another challenge in particularly South China Sea as we talk about the nine dash line. Its unilateral actions when it comes to violating the exclusive economic zones of the countries in the South China Sea particularly, and even the construction of artificial islands by China is a concern. And then China is at the same time militarizing those artificial islands. And then again, because of this, we are seeing the competition for US. So US is also at the same time increasing its presence in the Indo-Pacific region, be it strengthening its relation with Japan or again having its military bases in Japan and even South Korea. So economic deglobalization यहाँ पे term है. Economic deglobalization is posing new challenges for ASEAN. So economic deglobalization, or as we can say, increasing shift towards protectionism is what we can say in other words is economic deglobalization. So one question which is there again related to globalization is whether it was again, has it been uh, able to deliver benefits to the developing countries, or even behind globalization also the main ideology or the hidden interest also involved the interest of the western countries or the developed countries, and same is the case with the deglobalization also because protectionism ultimately it is about the self interest of the different developed countries. So that is the thing as we're talking about free trade agreements. So everywhere it is somewhere the hidden thing or the micro aspect is giving priority to our self-interest. So that is the concern that we can talk about here. So challenge would be sustained economic growth because again, because of the instability in the West, it would be also impacting the stability of the East. Because be it related to trade, be it related to when we're talking about that integration of supply chain is important. So that integration can also somewhere become a challenge because of the supply side shocks that can emerge out of it. So there's growing military capabilities. जो हमने बात करी. Then another regional organization we can talk about is Quad because it is again somewhere catering to the same objectives. So we have the rules which are again the United Nations Convention on Law of Seas is there. Resolving maritime disputes is important at the same time when we talk about the growth of blue economy. So even there, this unclause becomes important. International Seabed Authority is important because we have seen again certain instances related to China also going ahead with the deep sea mining without the authority and without the approval of the International Seabed Authority. So trade policy with ASEAN, however, in the context of India it remains a challenge for India. Our trade, although it has doubled in last decade, last 10 years to $130 billion, but India has trade deficit with this region. That is, we are importing more than what we are exporting to Southeast Asia. However, the potential is $4 trillion. So even this is in the context of, again, international context that we've discussed about the effectiveness of Act East policy. But when we're talking about the second dimension can be related to India's northeastern region, where we are seeing more of investments inflow from Japan under JICA. And that is related to more of connectivity projects, more of generating or enhancing the manufacturing capacity in the region, be it promoting more of organic farming. And we can also say at the same time, there is importance of the BIMSTEC or even when we're talking about the BBIN. So all these things are multilaterally contributing to the growth, to the success of the Act East policy and the Look East policy and even the Neighborhood First policy. Problem with free food. So पहला तो क्वेश्चन यही आता है फ्री फूड जब हम बोलते हैं कि क्या ये फ्रीबीज हम इसको कंसिडर करेंगे नहीं करेंगे. So regime of highly ineffective food fertilizer subsidies must be reformed. So यहाँ revenue expenditure rationalization की एक बात हो रही है. But free food की जब हम बात करते हैं, so we can talk about here the conflict between the food security and nutritional security versus the revenue expenditure, or we can talk about versus the fiscal deficit or versus the fiscal consolidation. तो दोनों को सेम टाइम पे हम कैसे करेंगे वो हमारे लिए चैलेंज है. फूड सिक्योरिटी वर्सेस फिस्कल कंसोलिडेशन. गवर्नमेंट नीड्स टू समन द करेज टू बाइट द बुलेट. तो इवन जब हम फर्टिलाइजर सब्सिडीज की बात कर रहे हैं, फूड सब्सिडीज की बात कर रहे हैं, तो इन दिस रीसेंट बजट वी सॉ that it has been rationalized. So we are already moving in this direction that the subsidies has seen certain amount of reduction by the government. So rationalization is happening. So how we can further increase is another question. So we can say that the role of private sector can play an important role when it comes to different levels and even the supply chain integration here. How we are using even the technology so that we can reduce the wastage of the food or even the diversion of the food, which can help us save more of revenue expenditure being done by the government. And this has been possible also at the same time by the direct benefit transfers scheme that has been launched by the government. So proper implementation and planning becomes important at the same time. So here we're talking about the Food and Agriculture Organization, which is again United Nations body. So we celebrate 16th October as World Food Day. So this is one thing when we talk about simply the availability, accessibility, and affordability of the food. So under the National Food Security Act, we can say we have been able to meet this objective. Now, when we go into the second layer, we talk about the availability of nutritious food or dealing with hidden hunger as we talk about. So here we're talking about the availability of fortified food through like Poshan Abhiyan is there. Or when we're talking about again the PDS scheme can make available the fortified foods, or when we talking about the one district, one product, promoting more of the traditional food varieties. For example, we can say that MSMEs or the micro food processing industries can play important role when it comes to example of like corn chips are being manufactured. So giving them benefits of scale can really help us in this sense. And apart from this, like यहाँ पे poverty की बात हो रही है तो रंगराजन committee. Role of NGOs is very important when it comes to again food and nutritional security. Then we're talking about 1998 to 2004 के time period में we reformed the food subsidy regime, made PDS targeted scheme. So this has also given us desired benefits. So we are talking about the Antyodaya Yojana. People got free food under this, and even during COVID-19, we saw that the scheme was introduced related to Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana. So in the current government's regime, when we're talking about led by the Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, different definitions to measure poverty has emerged. So even when it comes to Niti Aayog's multidimensional poverty index, for example, so there also it is not only food security, it is nutritional security which is important. Then even how we can focus indirectly, how we can reduce the burden or the revenue expenditure burden on the government is by increasing the real per capita income of the people as we talk about shift from minimum wage to living wage. So even that is also one of the ways of reducing or rationalizing the revenue expenditure, because people's purchasing power would be increasing up and they can selfly they can buy the demanded food that they want. So why can't humans work, earn, and have their basic food? So it is somewhere now related to even the healthcare infrastructure at the same time. When we're talking about again the stunting, the wasting which is there, or underweight challenge which is there, and at the same time the problem of anemia. So it is directly impacting the productivity of the labor force. And when you're talking about further new innovative developments like ICRER research shows that substantial part, just 25 to 30% of these two subsidies, food and fertilizers, never reaches the intended beneficiaries. This is very huge. 25 to 30% is being diverted. So वही जो efficiency की हम starting में बात कर रहे थे, if we are able to plug this, so we'll be able to save a lot of financial expenditure by the government, because जो additional expenditure हमें करना पड़ता है. So it is defeating the purpose of right to food. So even SDG goals of zero hunger can be achieved all through all these measures. And also indirectly, Indian agriculture is being focused upon because climate change poses us another risk. So here this is talking about the productivity increase and the availability of food to overcome the curse of malnutrition. The agri-food space. So we see a beautiful picture. Elephant safari scheduled to reopen shortly for the tourist season at Kaziranga National Park. So this is in Assam. And we've been talking about the conservation of elephant species in India. Like we talked about Project Elephant, launched in 1992. Then we talked about the IUCN status. I guess it was endangered for the elephants, the Asian elephants. Then the comparison between the Asian elephants and the physical characteristics and traits with the African elephant is another thing. Female elephants, this is very important point. Female elephants do not have tusks, as you can see in this picture also. They're not having the tusks. And also it is related to our cultural practices at the same time. We associate elephant with Ganpati ji. So we have again we saw that Ganpati festival was recently celebrated. So very key aspect. issues in the treatment of rare diseases and what the government can do in this. So, rare diseases. Firstly, they are also called as orphan disease. So it can be because of the rarity related to the availability of medicines, the availability of therapies, because of very less number of patients related to those rare diseases. So that is why it is termed as rare. For example, examples are Gaucher disease. This is a neurological disorder. Then we have lysosomal storage disorders. So these are certain examples. So we are having the National Registry for the Rare and Other Inherited Disorders. This was started by ICMR. It is recorded 14,000 of rare diseases patients in the country. So question is, क्या फ्यूचर में भी ये डिजीजेस रेयर रहने वाले हैं नहीं रहने वाले? So are we prepared to deal with the rising numbers of these so-called rare diseases as of now? So there are different groups and categories. Group 1 includes diseases that can be treated with one-time curative procedure. So you can go through these categories. So we have a national policy for the same, National Policy for Rare Diseases 2021. So here the government is providing financial assistance up to rupees 50 lakhs. And this is one-time assistance who's receiving the treatment. So the question is again whether this amount is sufficient or not, because rare diseases, so because of less facilities, they are very, very costly at the same time. So even more research and development is needed in this direction. And even overall, when we talk about India's healthcare sector, so increasing the expenditure by the government as a percentage of GDP, as we stated, it should be increased to up to 4 to 5%. Then digital portal for crowdfunding was again opened up. So this is again because of very, very high out of pocket expenditure. It cost in crores of rupees. So this was again the financial assistance by the government. Cost of orphan drugs is at the same time, यहाँ पे particularly drugs की बात करें, so we can talk about how India's generic medicine industry, the manufacturing capacity that we talk about, that we want to be again pharmacy for the world. So are we able to meet this particular target for India itself when it comes to like the orphan diseases or the orphan drugs? So that can play a very critical role even in bringing down the cost of these drugs, bring down the price. Government can provide tax breaks to the companies who are particularly manufacturing or making the medicines related to the treatment of these rare drugs. This is one of the ways. Then even GST has been another concern. So even we've been talking about that health insurance पे GST कितना होना चाहिए, उसको और reduce करना चाहिए. तो यहाँ पे भी like 11% customs duty pay करनी पड़ती है, 12% GST you have to pay. तो health is a basic right. If here also we see that a higher amount of tax would be charged, so it would be hampering in terms of meeting the healthcare for all या फिर universal healthcare जो हमारा target, जो हमारा vision है, in an equitable manner. So when we talk about the Union Ministry of Chemicals, Fertilizers, even they ordered the issue regarding freeing the orphan drugs from price controls. So here, because the diseases are rare, the very limited number of companies who are making these medicines available, so is the element of monopoly would also be misused by those companies in order to make profits. So यहाँ पे हम पेटेंट्स एक्ट की बात कर रहे हैं ऑफ 1970. सो क्या फार्मा कंपनीज जो बूस्टिंग डोमेस्टिक एफर्ट्स की हम बात कर रहे हैं प्लस पेटेंट एक्ट, वुड दिस बी अ रोड ब्लॉक या फैसिलिटेट कर सकता है? जैसे हमने देखा था कोविड-19 जो वैक्सीन थी, इन दैट केस ऑल्सो इंडिया स्टेटेड कि पेटेंट्स एक्ट यूज नहीं होना चाहिए. सो दिस इशू वाज टेकन अप इन WTO एंड द डिसीजन केम इन favor of India and again Brazil. The National Rare Diseases Committee is there. ड्रग कंट्रोलर जनरल ऑफ इंडिया का इंपॉर्टेंट रोल है. एंड द इंस्टीट्यूशंस लाइक एम्स, सेंटर ऑफ एक्सेलेंस, जो ड्रग्स इंपोर्ट कर रहे हैं, डिस्ट्रीब्यूट कर रहे हैं. सो क्या जो रेयर डिजीजेस के ड्रग्स, अगेन इफ वी आर सीइंग द नंबर और द ट्रेंड शोकेसेस के नंबर्स इंक्रीज हो रहे हैं एंड इट विल फर्दर इंक्रीज इन फ्यूचर ऑल्सो. सो फॉर एग्जाम्पल, क्या हमें इसको इंटीग्रेट करना चाहिए विद डिफरेंट स्कीम्स लाइक जन औषधि केंद्र आर देयर, जहाँ पे बाकी जेनेरिक मेडिसिन 80 to 90% डिस्काउंट पे अवेलेबल है। ड्रैगन ड्रोन्स क्या हैं, which are being used in Russia-Ukraine war? So essentially release substance called thermite. So thermite mixture है aluminium का और iron oxide का, and it was developed a century ago to weld the railroad tracks. But again now these are being misused. So इसका impact क्या है, environment के ऊपर impact है, it can burn almost anything. You can see so dangerous and risky it can be, clothes से लेके trees को भी, military grade vehicles को भी burn कर सकता है। So you can imagine कि humans के ऊपर कितना severe impact हो सकता है, possibly fatal burns and bone damage. So यहाँ पे हम बात कर सकते हैं ethical wars की, कि to what extent are we seeing this, the war is taking shape. एंड देन शॉर्ट टर्म इम्पैक्ट्स नहीं, इसके लॉन्ग टर्म इम्पैक्ट्स भी हो सकते हैं, लाइक जब हम न्यूक्लियर वेपन्स की बात करते हैं। सो इज इट लीगल ऑल्सो टू यूज थर्माइट इन वेपन्स और नॉट? सो इन वॉर इट इज नॉट प्रोहिबिटेड अंडर द इंटरनेशनल लॉ, तो ये होना चाहिए प्रोहिबिटेड। So use of such incendiary weapons against the civilian targets is barred under the convention of certain conventional weapons. But war में आप कैसे आइडेंटिफाई करोगे सिविलियन पॉपुलेशन है या फिर दिस इज अगेन योर एनिमी? तो वहां पे तो इट बिकम्स अगेन एक लेवल प्लेइंग फील्ड हो जाती है, सब तो एवरीथिंग बिकम्स यूनिफॉर्म। सब उस टाइम पे आप जस्ट अटैक करने की सोचते हो। So problem with thermite is that it is rather indiscriminate. So this should be banned. So convention on certain conventional weapons actually limits its use to strictly military targets. तो military targets को war के time पे आप कैसे identify करोगे, वो problem है। So thermite को use किया गया था World War I में भी, World War II में भी, तो उसके बाद भी फिर भी हम रशिया यूक्रेन वॉर में इसका यूज देख रहे हैं। तो लर्निंग्स हमारी क्या रही एट दैट पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम? So Sai Baba's decade-long trials. So Sai Baba, he was charged with alleged Maoist links in 2014. He was an assistant professor at Delhi University, remained in jail for nearly 10 years. So Bombay High Court acquitted him twice over questions of procedural lapses. So another issue is his health issues. So जब हम ड्यू जस्टिस की बात करते हैं कि इज ऑलरेडी बीन इन जेल फॉर 10 years, ट्वाइस एक्विटल हुआ है, तो उसके पीछे व्हाट हैज बीन द रीजंस? एंड ड्यू जस्टिस, जैसे हम स्टार्टिंग में बात कर रहे थे सोशल जस्टिस, तो सोशल जस्टिस इज नॉट जस्ट ओनली लिमिटेड टू द वल्नरेबल सेक्शन ऑफ सोसाइटी, इट इज equally applicable to the upper section of the society as well. जो यहाँ पूरी केस की जर्नी है, we can just have a look at what acts have been used. So he's suffering from 90% disability due to polio infection contracted during his childhood. So we see that जो banned CPI Maoist organization है, it was believed and it was claimed कि he was an active member of it. So it is, we've talked about this, that CPIM had links with Naxalite movement in India. So Act UAPA Act लगाया गया, charges under Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. He was sentenced to life imprisonment. And first acquittal की फिर बात की जा रही है, that the Bombay High Court gave the first acquittal, whereas faults were there in the procedure followed by the investigating agency. तो ये एक example है due justice का. It was held null and void. And curable defect. So absence of the sanction is a curable defect. The court held that every legislatively provided safeguard, however minuscule, must be jealously protected. Sorry, zealously protected. मतलब छोटे से छोटा fact या जो information है, that is very crucial in terms of again delivering justice. Zealously protected, curable defect. Second acquittal and pleas on health conditions. We'll continue in the next part. Please share the link on the group.